You never know when a single act of kindness can change everything. What would you do if you were in Sophia's shoes? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment like this, where a simple gesture made a huge impact? Let's talk about it in the comments. And tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because tomorrow's story, it's even more unbelievable. You won't want to miss it. A waitress fed a lonely boy. She had no idea who was watching. The rain pounded against the windows of Madison Street Diner, each drop a steady drumbeat against the quiet hum of the near empty restaurant. It had been a slow night. A trucker sat in the corner nursing a cup of black coffee. A college student typed away on a laptop, lost in his own world. Behind the counter, Sophia Reed, a 26-year-old waitress, wiped down the counters, glancing at the clock. Just a few more hours before she could go home. But tonight, the diner felt colder, quieter, almost hollow. Then, through the streaked glass of the front window, she saw him. A small boy sat alone outside, his thin frame hunched under a worn-out blanket. His dark hair clung to his forehead, soaked from the rain. But what caught Sophia's attention the most was the wheelchair. The sight made something twist deep inside her. Without a second thought, she grabbed a clean towel from the kitchen and hurried outside. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently, crouching beside him, her voice soft against the howling wind. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy lifted his head, his wide blue eyes filled with hesitation. "I'm waiting for someone?" he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophia scanned the street, her heart tightening. No parents, no guardian in sight, just an empty sidewalk glistening under the streetlights. "You can't stay out here in this weather," she said. "Come inside with me, okay? It's warm, and I think I have something special for you." He hesitated, but then gave a small nod. Carefully, Sophia wheeled him inside, guiding him toward the radiator. She draped the towel over his small shoulders, trying not to show the ache in her chest at how cold he felt. "I'm Sophia," she said, offering him a warm smile. "What's your name?" "Lucas," he answered quietly. "Lucas," she repeated, like she was making sure she'd never forget it. "Well, Lucas, I hope you like grilled cheese. I make a pretty mean one." She didn't wait for an answer before heading to the kitchen, pulling out fresh bread, butter, and cheese. A few minutes later, she placed a steaming plate in front of him along with a mug of hot tomato soup. "This one's on me," she said, tucking a napkin into his lap. Lucas took a bite, his face lighting up with pure joy. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Sophia chuckled, sitting across from him. "Then I guess you've been eating all the wrong things," she teased. As they ate, they talked about silly things. Favorite superheroes, the best cartoons, how rainy nights made everything feel like a movie scene. And with each passing moment, Sophia felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. What she didn't know was that across the street, hidden in the shadows of a sleek black Cadillac Escalade, Ryan Callahan was watching. Through the rain-splattered glass, his sharp gray eyes stayed locked on the woman who had so effortlessly cared for his son, without hesitation, without expectation. At 42, Ryan had built an empire, Callahan Industries, a name known across the country. He had seen power, control, and wealth in all forms. But what he saw in Sophia tonight was something different, something rare, something that would change everything. Ryan Callahan couldn't stop thinking about her. As the Cadillac Escalade rolled through the rain-soaked streets of New York City, his mind wasn't on his billion-dollar empire, his next business deal, or the endless calls waiting for him. It was on the waitress at Madison Street Diner, Sophia Reed. She had no idea who Lucas was, no idea who he was. And yet, she had stepped into the storm without hesitation, brought his son inside, fed him, comforted him, as if he were any other kid. Not the son of a billionaire, not the heir to a fortune, just a boy sitting alone in the rain. Ryan leaned back against the leather seat, his fingers tapping against the armrest. He had spent years surrounded by people who only cared about what they could gain from him. He'd seen fake kindness, calculated generosity. But what he saw tonight, that was real. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. "Sir, I found the information you asked for," came the efficient voice of Emma Blake, his assistant. Ryan glanced at the screen, where a file had just been sent to him. "Send it to my home office." By the time he arrived at his penthouse overlooking Central Park, the file was waiting on his desk. He poured himself a glass of bourbon and opened it. Sophia Reed, 26 years old, waitress at Madison Street Diner for 5 years. No college degree, no living family, barely making ends meet. His grip tightened around the glass as he scanned the details. She had spent her entire life struggling, yet she had given everything to his son without even knowing who he was. Ryan exhaled slowly. He had built his company by trusting his instincts, and right now, his instincts told him he couldn't just walk away from this. The next morning, he made the call. Emma, set up a meeting. I want her here by noon. When Sophia arrived at Callahan Industries, she looked completely out of place. Her worn-out sneakers and faded jeans stood in stark contrast to the sleek glass walls and polished floors of the towering 70-story skyscraper. Ryan watched as she stepped off the elevator, her eyes filled with hesitation. She had no idea why she was here, and she had no idea what he was about to offer her. Sophia had no idea what she was doing here. She stood in the massive glass lobby of Callahan Industries, surrounded by people in tailored suits, their heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The air smelled of fresh coffee and wealth, two things she was definitely not used to. Her heart pounded as she clutched the strap of her worn-out bag. This was a mistake. Maybe they had the wrong person. Maybe she should turn around and leave before someone realized she didn't belong here. Sophia Reed? She turned to see a woman in a sleek navy dress holding a tablet. Her blonde hair was pulled into a perfect bun. She looked like someone who belonged in this world. Unlike Sophia. Yeah, that's me, Sophia said hesitantly. I'm Emma Blake, Mr. Callahan's assistant. He's ready for you. Sophia swallowed hard as she followed Emma down a long hallway, past offices that looked like something out of a movie. Glass walls, expensive art, people speaking in hushed, important voices. Then, Emma opened a door and motioned for her to step inside. Ryan Callahan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the New York skyline. When he turned, his sharp gray eyes locked onto hers, unreadable. He was even more intimidating up close, powerful, controlled, the kind of man who could make or break someone's life with a single decision. Have a seat, he said, his voice smooth but firm. Sophia sat, feeling painfully out of place. He studied her for a moment before speaking. I saw what you did last night. Her stomach twisted. I don't understand. With Lucas, his voice softened slightly. You didn't know who he was. You didn't know who I was. But you helped him, fed him, took care of him. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. He was just a kid sitting in the rain. I couldn't just leave him there. Ryan nodded, as if that was exactly the answer he had expected. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. I want you to work for me. Sophia blinked. I'm sorry. What? I want to offer you a job. Here, at Callahan Industries. Her mind spun. This had to be a joke. I don't know anything about business. I'm just a waitress. I don't need you to know business, Ryan said firmly. I need someone with a heart like yours. Sophia stared at him, speechless. He wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her a way out. Sophia never expected the world of Callahan Industries to be easy, but she also never expected to feel like she was drowning. The moment she accepted Ryan's job offer, everything changed. The diner, her quiet routine, the struggle of living paycheck to paycheck, it all felt like a different lifetime. Now, she spent her days in sleek conference rooms, surrounded by people who spoke in numbers and strategies she barely understood. And they were watching her. The whispers started almost immediately. Why is she here? She was literally a waitress last week. This has to be some kind of PR stunt. Sophia tried to ignore it, but doubt crept in like a slow poison. She worked harder, stayed late, read everything she could to keep up. She wasn't about to waste this opportunity. But then, just as she started to find her footing, the ground was ripped from beneath her. One afternoon, Emma Blake walked up to her desk, her usual composed expression replaced with something tense. We have a problem, Emma said in a hushed voice. Sophia's stomach twisted. What kind of problem? Emma hesitated, then leaned in. There's been a leak. Sensitive company information was sent to a competitor. Sophia's brows knitted together. Okay, but what does that have to do with me? Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. Someone saw you talking to a guy from Hudson Tech last week at the diner. Sophia's heart stopped. The man at the diner. He'd been friendly, asked about her new job, about Callahan Industries. She hadn't thought anything of it, just casual conversation. But now it looked like something much worse. Ryan called her into his office within the hour. She stood in front of his massive desk, her pulse hammering. His sharp gray eyes scanned her like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "Maggie, I took a chance on you," he said, his voice calm but cold. "I need to know the truth. Did you leak company information?" Her breath caught in her throat. I didn't. I swear. I would never." Ryan slid a folder across the desk. Inside were emails, transcripts, messages, all of them pointing to her. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. This wasn't real. Someone had set her up. But the only question now was, would Ryan believe her? Sophia's hands shook as she stared at the folder in front of her. Emails, transcripts, messages, all pointing to her. She looked up at Ryan Callahan, his expression unrateable, his sharp gray eyes watching her every move. The weight of his silence pressed down on her like a stone. "Ryan, I swear, I didn't do this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't even understand half of this stuff." His jaw clenched. "Then how do you explain the fact that your name is all over it?" Sophia's mind raced. This was impossible. She barely knew how to work her company email, let alone leak sensitive business information. But someone had gone through the trouble of making it look like she had. And suddenly, it hit her. The man at the diner. The so-called casual conversation. Her breath caught in her throat as the pieces started falling into place. She looked up at Ryan, desperation creeping into her voice. "There was a guy at the diner last week. He asked me questions about my job. I didn't think anything of it, but what if he was working with Hudson Tech? What if this was a setup?" Ryan studied her, his expression still unreadable. "That's convenient," he said after a moment. Sophia's stomach twisted. He didn't believe her. "You think I'm lying," she said, more a statement than a question. Ryan exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "I think I took a risk hiring you, and now my company is bleeding information. Whether or not it was intentional, the fact is, someone made you the perfect scapegoat." Sophia felt the floor drop beneath her. If he believed she was the problem, it was over. He could fire her, ruin her. She'd go back to the diner, broke and humiliated, with no way to clear her name. "No," she clenched her fists. "Then let me prove it wasn't me," she said firmly. Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Give me 24 hours, she pressed. "Let me find out who's really behind this." A tense silence stretched between them. Then, finally, he exhaled and nodded once. 24 hours, he said. "If you can't prove it by then, you're done." Sophia swallowed hard. The clock was ticking, and if she didn't figure this out in time, she would lose everything. Sometimes, life changes in ways we never expect. One moment, you're just trying to get through the day. And the next, you're thrown into a world you never imagined. Sophia thought she was just doing the right thing, helping a child in need. But that one act of kindness set off a chain of events that changed everything. What would you have done in her place? If a billionaire offered you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, would you take it, even if you felt completely out of place? Or would you be too afraid to step into the unknown? And what about trust? Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? How did you handle it? Do you think Sophia should have fought harder to clear her name? Or was she right to demand a chance to prove herself? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Your perspective makes these stories even better. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because tomorrow's story, it's one you won't want to miss.